The day I hit my 8th month of pregnancy, I got a call saying Lou Chijo had been kidnapped. I fought my way through over 20 men drenched in blood and slammed open the final door, only to hear his white moonlight muse laughing inside. 8 minutes left. Let's bet on whether she'll crawl over here like a dog. Inside the room, he was swirling red wine with her in his arms. Outside the door, the blade in my hand was dripping. They had no idea that I used to be a mercenary and the thing I hate most in this life is being treated like a dog. When the phone rang, I was chopping vegetables. The blade hit the cutting board, producing cucumber slices so thin they were translucent. Lou Chijo said he liked them crisp, so I'd practiced my knife skills for 3 months. By now, I could match a professional chef with my eyes closed. The phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I wiped my hands and pulled it out. An unknown number. It's Xiao Liu, Chijo's driver. The boss has been snatched. You have to come quick. In the background there was the whistling of wind, a ship's horn, and a man's muffled screams. The knife stopped. Be specific. We just finished a deal at the docks when a gang jumped us. They dragged the boss into a warehouse. They're demanding 20 million in cash or else they'll. The voice broke into sobs. I turned off the stove and untied my apron. Which dock? Abandoned container zone 3. Don't call the cops. They said they'll kill him if they see a siren. The line went dead. I looked down at my belly. 8 months along, it looked like I'd strapped a heavy pot to my waist. Just last week, Lou Chijo promised that once the baby was born, he'd take us to the Maldives. I walked into the bedroom and pulled a moisture-proof bag from the deepest corner of the closet. I zipped it open. A black tactical suit, a combat knife, brass knuckles, and a tactical dagger I'd used for 7 years. The blade was engraved with 2 words, Haidonking, the Gerfalcon, in the mercenary world only. The top 5 elites have the right to name their weapons. It had been 3 years. I changed my clothes. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger. The loose athletic gear couldn't hide my bump, and my face had lost the icy edge of the battlefield, replaced by the puffiness and fatigue unique to pregnancy. But my eyes hadn't changed. They were still the eyes of someone looking at a corpse. I hailed a cab, seeing my protruding stomach and the heavy gym bag. The driver asked, heading to the hospital. The docks. Which one? Abandoned zone 3. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror and didn't say another word. 40 minutes later, the car pulled up at the entrance to the container zone. The sky was pitch black, a salty metallic sea breeze whipped through the air, and searchlights flickered in the distance. The driver took the money and peeled out instantly. I gripped my bag and headed inside. After about 300 yards, the first lookout appeared. A man was perched on top of a container, a cigarette glowing in the dark, a steel pipe dangling from his hand. He spotted me, froze for a second, then jumped down to block my path. This area is closed, beat it. I didn't say a word, I just kept walking. He reached out to shove me, but the moment his hand touched my shoulder, I grabbed his wrist with my left hand and my combat knife drove upward through his chin, piercing his hard palate. He didn't even have time to scream before he slumped to the ground. I pulled the blade out. Blood sprayed across the side of the container. I kept moving. The second man, the third, the fourth. Some had knives, some had clubs, some had machetes. I didn't count how many I killed. I only knew that with every step I took, someone fell. My abdomen felt heavy, a dragging sensation. Maybe the baby was kicking. No time for that. 5 minutes in, I broke through the first perimeter. 6 minutes, the second. At the 8-minute mark, I stood before the main warehouse doors. 6 men stood guard, all armed with handguns. The leader, a bald guy, stared at me, his eyes wide as saucers. Holy shit, she's actually pregnant. How did she get through? There were over 20 guys out there. I didn't give him a chance to react. The combat knife left my hand, buried deep in his throat. He clutched his neck and collapsed, his gun clattering to the floor. The remaining 5 had barely raised their muzzles before I tore into them. My tactical suit was soaked in blood. I couldn't tell if it was theirs or mine. As the final blade fell, all 6 were down. I pushed open the warehouse door. Inside was a hallway leading to an iron door at the far end. Light spilled out from underneath, along with the sound of voices. It was Lou Chijo's voice. He was laughing. I leaned against the wall as I made my way down. My water had broken. A warm liquid was trickling down my legs. I reached the door, my hand on the handle, ready to shove it open. Then I heard a woman's voice, Lin Jixia, Lou Chijo's childhood sweetheart, the white moonlight muse who had just returned from studying abroad, the woman he'd been making excuses to see every other day for the past 6 months. 8 minutes left. She chuckled. Are you sure Song Yang can make it all the way here? Lou Chijo's voice followed. She's pregnant 8 months, how could she possibly fight her way through? Then what are we betting on? On whether she'll even show up. Didn't you say she's head over heels for me? That she'd definitely crawl here with everything she's got. And the stakes are, Lu Chizhou let out a low laugh. If she actually crawls here, I'll tell her to her face that these 3 years of bliss were all an act. I only married her because I needed a bodyguard and a hitman. If she doesn't show, even better. Saves me the trouble of splitting assets in a divorce. Lin Jixia giggled. You're so cruel. She's literally carrying your child. Child? Lu Chizhou's voice turned cold. A child born from a killing machine like her, who would want that? I've already settled things. With the hospital, when she goes into labor, they'll just say it was a difficult birth and the baby didn't make it. We can have another one later, but it has to be yours. My hand froze on the doorknob. Blood dripped from the tip of my knife onto the floor. 1 drop, 2, 3. Another kick from inside my belly. I suddenly wanted to laugh. 3 years, over 1,000 days. I woke up at 5:30 every morning to make him breakfast. He liked soft-boiled eggs, so I practiced for 2 months until I could get the yolk perfectly runny every time. He had a weak stomach, so I learned to make slow-cooked soups, cracking 7 clay pots before I mastered the flavor he liked. When he came home drunk and vomiting from business dinners, I knelt on the floor to clean up after him. He told me, "I'm so lucky to have married you." In bed, he'd whisper, "I love you, wifey." I'd look into his eyes and think my whole life had finally become worth something, worth my ass. I shifted the knife to my left hand and pushed the door open with my right. The moment the door swung open, the laughter inside died. It was a surveillance room. An entire wall of screens was playing the footage of my path here. The blood, the bodies, the fallen thugs, red wine, and steaks were laid out on a table. Lu Chizhou and Lin Jixia were sitting side by side on a sofa, wine glasses in hand. The second Lu Chizhou saw me, his expression was a masterpiece. First shock, his eyes nearly popped out of his skull, then terror, his face turned ashen. His hand shook so hard the wine splashed onto his sleeve. Finally, panic, he scrambled to his feet, knocking over his chair as he backed away. Lin Jixia was composed. She sat there, head tilted, studying me. She was wearing a delicate white dress, her makeup flawless, her lipstick was a trendy shade, her eyeshadow a soft peach. She looked and smelled like a dream. And there I stood in the doorway, covered in blood, my tactical suit clinging to my skin, and heaven knows if the liquid running down my legs was amniotic fluid or someone else's blood. Song Yang, Lu Chizhou's voice was trembling. How are you? How am I still alive? I finished the sentence for him. The 20+ guys outside, they weren't very good. I took a step forward, he took a step back. Lin Jixia spoke up then, her voice soft and sweet. Sister, don't get the wrong idea, we were just playing a little joke. I ignored her and kept my eyes fixed on Lu Chizhou. We can have another child later, those were your words. He couldn't meet my gaze. The one who gives birth has to be Lin Jixia. Those were your words too. He swallowed hard, his lips twitching, but he couldn't find his voice. Lin Jixia stood up, walked over to Lu Chizhou and wrapped her arm around his. She looked at me and said, "Sister, you might not know this, but Chizhou and I have known each other since we were kids. We're the ones truly in love. Throughout these 3 years you've been married to him. He's been telling me he was just waiting for the right chance to divorce you. It's just that with the baby, he found it hard to bring up." I watched her hand on his arm, the sight was blindingly sharp. "So this whole show today was your idea?" "That's right." She smiled with mock innocence. "I just wanted to see how much you actually loved him. I heard you used to be a mercenary, a cold-blooded killer, so I told Chizhou, let's make a bet. We'll say you've been kidnapped and see if she comes to the rescue." Chizhou was sure you'd come. I wasn't so certain. "I mean, you are pregnant after all." She paused, her eyes curving into crescents. "You won, I lost. What kind of reward would you like?" I looked at her, then back at Lu Chizhou. He still hadn't dared to look up. "Reward," I repeated slowly. "Sure, what do you want? Money, a house? Just say the word and I'm sure Chizhou will give it to you." I took another step, only 3 paces left between us. I switched the knife from my left hand back to my right. "Your life." Lin Jixia's face finally crumbled. She stumbled back, nearly tripping. Lu Chizhou rushed to steady her, shielding her with his body as he barked at me. "Song Yang, you've lost your mind, don't you dare touch her." I stopped in my tracks, looking at him standing there, protecting her. It was suddenly, painfully hilarious. In our 3 years of marriage, how many blades had I blocked for him? One winter, he offended the wrong people. When they came banging on our door in the middle of the night, I ran out barefoot and took down 7 of them on my own. Afterward, he held me and cried, swearing I was the only one he'd ever love, and now I hadn't even moved and he already stepped forward. Lu Chizhou. I called his name. He looked at me with eyes full of terror, guilt, and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Do you know what I was thinking when I was fighting my way in here? He said nothing. I thought you must be terrified that you were waiting for me. I told myself I had to be faster, even faster, because every extra second you waited was another second of suffering for you. I looked down at my belly. Amniotic fluid was trickling down my legs, forming a small puddle on the floor. The baby kept kicking. I told him, hush now, Daddy is waiting for us. When I looked up again, my eyes felt a bit stung, but I didn't cry. By the time I fought to the door, my water broke. I thought, it's fine, just get him out first. And then I heard what you said. We can have another child later. I laughed. Lu Chizhou, are you even human? He lowered his head, remaining silent. Lin Jixia poked her head out from behind him, her voice regaining a bit of its nerve. Song Yang, don't be so dramatic. Chizhou might have done you wrong. But look at yourself. What's your background? A killer, a mercenary. You know exactly how much blood is on your hands. What decent man could truly love a woman like you? She grew bolder as she spoke, stepping out from behind Lu Chizhou until she stood just 3 paces away from me. Chizhou was kind enough to marry you, give you a home, and turn a hitwoman into a normal person. You should be down on your knees in gratitude. You want true love. Do you even deserve it? I watched her mouth move and a memory suddenly surfaced. Lin Jixia, what is your position at Chizhou Group? She blinked, caught off guard by the question, then lifted her chin. Assistant to the general manager. Why? When you were hired, did you sign the employee handbook? She frowned. Why the hell are you asking that? Answer me. Yes, I signed it, so what? I took a step forward. She instinctively took a step back. Article 3 of the Employee Handbook. Insulting, slandering, or threatening colleagues is a serious offense. Depending on the severity, it results in a warning, a demerit, or summary dismissal. She froze. Article 7. Sabotaging the family harmony of company executives is a severe violation of discipline, resulting in immediate termination. Her face began to change. Article 12. If a probationary employee commits a serious disciplinary breach, the company has the right to terminate the labor contract immediately without any compensation. What are you trying to do? I looked at her and smiled. I'm teaching you how to be a person. Before the sentence even finished, my right hand moved. Using the flat of the blade, I slapped her across the face. Slap. She went flying sideways, slamming into the surveillance console before bouncing onto the floor. Half her face swelled instantly. Blood leaked from the corner of her mouth as she lay there, struggling to crawl back up. Lu Chizhou let out a cry and rushed to her side. Jixia. I stood my ground, watching him help her up. Lin Jixia clutched her face, staring at me with pure terror, her voice whistling through her swollen lips. You dared to hit me. Hit you? I walked toward her slowly, every footstep echoing in her heart. I've only just begun. Lu Chizhou shielded her, barking at me. Song Yang, you've lost it. Don't you dare touch her again. I stopped and looked at him. Lu Chizhou, I'm giving you one chance. What? Come with me now. We go to the hospital and we might still save the baby. I can pretend I never heard a word you said today. You sign the divorce papers, you keep the assets, and I walk away with nothing. He stunned. Lin Jixia quickly grabbed his arm, sobbing. Chizhou, don't listen to her. She's just bluffing. She's a killer. Call the police and have her arrested. I looked at her and laughed. The police, and tell them what? That a pregnant wife caught her husband cheating and slapped the mistress. I pulled out my phone and gave it a little shake. Everything you just said, it's all recorded. Lin Jixia's face went white. Lu Chizhou was paralyzed. Lin Jixia, you said it yourself. You told Lu Chizhou to set this whole thing up just to see if I'd crawl here like a dog. If this gets out, how much do you think Chizhou Group's stock will plummet? I turned my gaze to Lu Chizhou. Will you still be able to keep your seat as CEO? His face turned a sickly shade of grey and he couldn't utter a word. I'll give you 3 minutes to think it over. I leaned against the doorframe, the tip of my knife resting on the floor. In 3 minutes you can choose her or you can choose me, but let me be clear, no matter what you choose, this marriage is over. Lu Chizhou looked at me, then at Lin Jixia. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Lin Jixia grew desperate, shaking his arm. Chizhou, don't let her intimidate you. She's a murderer. Is her word even worth anything? Call the police, do it now. Lu Chizhou didn't move. I checked my watch. 2 minutes left. Lin Jixia frantically pulled out her phone, but I snatched it from her hand and smashed it onto the floor. Shut up. I stared at Lu Chizhou. Choose. The seconds ticked by. Lu Chizhou's face went from white to red, then back to white. Finally, he closed his eyes and let out a long, heavy breath. Song Yang. Yes, I'm sorry. I waited, but I can't go with you. I smiled. Jixia is right. You know exactly how much blood is on your hands. We aren't from the same world. I know I've wronged you these past 3 years, but I truly can't compare her to you. She grew up with me. She's a proper lady from a good family. She's... Enough. I cut him off. I looked down at my phone. Time was up. Fine, you've made your choice. I sheathed my knife and used the wall for support as I started to walk out. At the doorway, I looked back at them one last time. Lu Chizhou was huddling with Lin Jixia, the two of them squeezed together like a pair of frightened quails. Lu Chizhou, remember what you said today. We can have another child later. I only hope that for the rest of your life you never have to beg me for anything again. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the darkness. City Hospital, VIP ward. I lay on the hospital bed with fetal monitor probes strapped to my belly. The machine emitted a rhythmic thump thump thump, the baby's heartbeat strong and steady. The doctor said my water had broken, but the volume was low so we could still try to save the pregnancy. I was ordered to stay on absolute bed rest, no standing, no walking, and zero strenuous activity. The nurse hooked me up to a drip for the pregnancy stabilizing meds, saying they'd monitor me for 3 days. Lu Chizhou sat on the sofa in the corner of the room, head down, silent. He had been sitting there for 3 hours. From the moment he brought me from the docks to the hospital until now, he hadn't said a single word. I didn't want to talk either. My phone sat on the nightstand. The screen flickered for a second, then went dark. Old Ghost had replied, just 2 words. Copy that. Old Ghost was my former partner, a middleman in Southeast Asia. When I retired 3 years ago, he saw me off at the airport and said one thing. Hi Donking, remember, the lives of people like us are earned by our own hands. Never hand yours over to anyone else. I thought he just didn't understand back then. Now I understood perfectly. Lu Chizhou finally spoke. Song Yang. I ignored him. He stood up, walked to the bedside and looked at me. The doctor said the baby is stable, but you have to stay in bed for a month. You can't even stand up. I continued to stare at the ceiling. About the company. Don't talk to me about the company. He finally shut up. After a moment of silence, he spoke again. What you said today, does it still stand? I tilted my head to look at him. What exactly? The divorce. I smiled. Are you in that much of a hurry? He lowered his head. Jixia said, you recorded us, that recording can't get out. And so you delete the recording first and we'll have an amicable split regarding the assets. I'll give you a larger share so you'll be set for the future. I stared at him. I stared for a full 10 seconds. His eyes darted away, unable to hold my gaze. Lu Chizhou, I said slowly, do you know how many people I killed at the docks today? He turned pale. I counted 23. I didn't call the police. And neither did anyone else. Do you know why? He shook his head. Because those kidnappers weren't kidnappers at all. They were thugs hired by Lin Jixia. He was stunned. Lin Jixia hired people to stage a fake kidnapping so you could play along with the act, just to bet on whether I'd come for you. As it turns out, of those 23 thugs, I killed 11 and critically injured 12 right now. Their crew is searching high and low for Lin Jixia to settle the medical bills. Lu Chizhou's face turned ghostly white. How do you know that? Did you think I didn't ask questions before I fought my way in? I sneered. The first guy who tried to block me. I squeezed the truth out of him. Who hired you? How much? What's the play? He sang like a canary. Lin Jixia's price was 20,000 per person, with extra for any fatalities. Lu Chizhou backed up until he hit the wall. So you see, I continued, the white moonlight Yuri so desperate to protect not only played you for a fool, but she screwed you over in the process. If word got out that the president of Chizhou Group and his assistant teamed up to set a trap for a pregnant wife, how far do you think the stock would drop? Lu Chizhou leaned against the wall, unable to say a word. Right then, the door was pushed open. Lin Jixia walked in, her face covered in gauze. Half her face was swollen like a bun, and her eye was a deep shade of purple. She looked utterly pathetic. She saw Lu Chizhou standing in the corner and then saw me in the bed. Her eyes welled up instantly and she lunged toward him. Chizhou, you can't just let her get away with hitting me. I'm calling the police. I'm suing her for assault. Lu Chizhou caught her, his expression unreadable. Lin Jixia turned to glare at me, her eyes brimming with pure hatred. Song Yang, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're pregnant. I'm telling you, my brother is a lawyer and my sister is a journalist. I will ruin you. I looked at her and laughed. Lin Jixia, do you have any idea how many people are looking for you right now? She blinked. Of those 23 thugs you hired, 11 are dead and 12 are in critical condition. Their people are currently staking out the hospital entrance, waiting for you to step outside. The color drained from her face. You're lying. Lying, go out and see for yourself. She didn't believe me. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. She tried 3 times, but no one picked up. She switched to another number. This time someone answered. She barely managed a hello before the person on the other end started screaming. Lin Jixia, you bitch, you got our brothers killed. Did you know that pregnant woman was a killing machine? She gutted my brother. His body is in the morgue right now. You just wait, I'm gonna end you. She was so terrified she dropped her phone. She threw herself into Lu Chizhou's arms, trembling uncontrollably. Lu Chizhou held her, looking at me with a complicated gaze. Song Yang, please, you have to help her. I laughed. Help her? She didn't mean it. She had no idea things would spiral this far. Lu Chizhou, I cut him off. Is there a literal hole in your brain? He froze. I was carrying your child, fighting through hell and high water, nearly miscarrying in the process, and now you're asking me to help the very person who set a trap to destroy me. He lowered his head and said nothing. Lin Jixia looked up from his arms, her eyes brimming with tears as she stared at me. Song Yang, I'm sorry, I was wrong, I really was, I just wanted to play a joke. I didn't think it would turn out like this. Please help me, I'm begging you, those thugs really are going to kill me. Looking at her damsel in distress act, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Get out. She blinked. Get out right now. Lu Chizhou started to speak, but one glare from me silenced him. You too, get lost. His mouth hung open but no words came out. He supported Lin Jixia as they shuffled out the door. The moment the door clicked shut, the world finally went quiet. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Old Ghost. Help me run a background check. On who? Lin Jixia, assistant to the GM at Chizhou Group, foreign educated. Why her? Someone wants her dead, and you're stopping them. I'm not stopping anyone, I just want to see exactly how much debt she's carrying on her back. Old Ghost sent a laughing emoji. The Gerfalcon has finally come back to life. I didn't reply. I put the phone down and touched my belly, feeling the baby move. Little guy, I whispered. Mama might have to take you down a road that isn't exactly easy to walk. The baby gave a little kick as if in response. Outside, the dawn was breaking. 1 month later, an urban village in an underground pool hall. I was wearing an oversized hoodie. My stomach was flat again. The baby had been premature and spent 23 days in the ICU, but he was finally out of danger, being cared for by a reliable maternity nurse Old Ghost had scouted. The pool hall was in a basement. The entrance was through a hardware store. After walking through a corridor piled high with stock and pushing through an iron door, I found a room thick with cigarette smoke. A dozen men circled the pool tables, the crack of cues echoing. I stood at the entrance, not stepping in. Someone recognized me and nudged the person next to him. Word spread like wildfire, and soon everyone stopped and stared. Old Ghost stood up from a sofa at the far end. He had a cigarette dangling from his lip, wearing a loud floral shirt and a thick gold chain, swaying as he walked over. Well, a rare guest. Ghost. He looked me up and down, exhaling a plume of smoke. I heard you got knocked up and then unloaded the cargo. Premature, the kid's in the hospital. He nodded, not prying further, and turned to walk toward the back. Follow me. I followed him past the pool tables into a back office. As the door shut, the noise from outside was cut off. Old Ghost sank into his executive chair, crossed his legs, and tossed a cigarette toward me. I quit. Quit because of the pregnancy. Yeah. He took the cigarette back, lit it himself, and took a drag. Alright, tell me what you need. I sat across from him. I want back in the crew. He froze for a second, then laughed. Hi donking, you're shitting me right back in. You gave birth barely a month ago, 33 days. Then what are you getting back into? Is your body recovered? Can your stamina keep up? Can you drive a blade home without your hand shaking? I looked him in the eye. You can test me. He stunned again, then shook his head with a chuckle. Look, I know you haven't gone soft, but getting back in isn't just my call. The brothers have to respect it. How do I earn it? He pulled open a drawer and tossed a knife onto the desk, a combat knife half-worn with nicks along the blade. The old rules, a Tuminghuang, an initiation kill. I picked up the knife and felt its weight. Who's the target? He stared at me, his expression turning serious. Song Yang, think this through. Once you hand in that initiation, there's no turning back. It's a life on the edge from here on out. What happens to your kid? I was silent for 2 seconds. The kid has someone to look after him. Who? That nurse you found. She's solid. He nearly choked on his smoke. God damn it. Ghost, I interrupted. I've thought this through over the last month. I used to think that finding a man to marry and living a quiet life was the ultimate sanctuary. I know better now. What did you learn? I learned the mistake of putting my life in someone else's hands. I stood up and tucked the knife into my bag. Who's the target for the initiation? He watched me for a long time before finally sighing. Lin Jixia, my hand. Paused for a fraction of a second. You looked into her. You asked me to. He pulled a dossier from the drawer and tossed it over. This girl is more than meets the eye. On the surface, she's an assistant at Chizhou Group. In reality, she's laundering money for the company. Her handler is a guy called Snakehead. He specializes in cross-border capital transfers. All the black money in Southeast Asia goes through him. I opened the folder. Inside were photos, bank transfer records, and screenshots of chat logs. Lin Jixia had frequent contact with an account named Uncle Snake. Every conversation was encrypted, but Old Ghost's team had cracked part of it. The latest message: handle that mercenary as soon as possible. Her being alive is bad for us. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago. I put the photos down. She wants me dead, right? Old Ghost leaned back. So, are you going to move before she does? I didn't say a word. I took the knife out of my bag and placed it on the table. Where is she staying? You're going now. She's in a high-end apartment right next to Chizhou Group. Lu Chizhou bought it for her. She's been traveling with 4 bodyguards lately. Your ex-husband is footing the bill for the muscle. Lu Chizhou. A month had passed, and hearing that name again stirred no emotion in my heart. For bodyguards, on rotation. For isn't enough. Old Ghost grinned. High donking is still high donking. He stood up, walked over, and patted my shoulder. I approve your return to the crew, but the initiation doesn't have to be a kill. Just get me something useful. Like what? Lin Jixia's laptop or her phone, or anything that can provide hard evidence of her money laundering. She's a key node for Snakehead. If we take her down, we can take a massive cut of the pie. I looked at him. Ghost, you're turning me into a thief. What's wrong with being a thief? You used to kill without blinking. Since when did you become too shy to steal? I was silent for 2 seconds, then sheathed the knife. Fine. As I reached the door, he called out to me. Hi donking. I turned back. Did you name the kid? I did. What is it? Song Nyan. He paused, then smiled, thinking. Nyan, of whom? I didn't answer. I just pushed the door open and left. Lin Jixia's apartment was in the city center, a penthouse, over 300 square meters with floor-to-ceiling windows and a river view. Lu Chizhou had bought it. Her name was on the deed. I spent 3 days scouting, mapping out her daily routine. She left for the office at 9:00 a.m. and returned at 7:00 p.m., though she stayed out later if there were social events on weekends. She barely left the house, ordering takeout, watching movies, with the occasional visitor. Among the visitors there were men and women, but I never saw Lu Chizhou. Not surprising, he was likely drowning in his own mess. Although the police weren't called for the incident at the docks, the families of the 20-plus thugs were swarming the company every day demanding money. The media had caught the scent too. Chizhou Group's stock had plummeted 30% in a month. Lin Jixia, meanwhile, was hiding in her nest, barely even showing up at the office. On the 4th night, I made my move at 11:00 p.m. She had just finished her takeout, showered, and was lying in bed watching a movie. I took the fire escape to the roof, used a decoder to bypass the rooftop door, and rappelled down the exterior wall to her balcony. The balcony door wasn't locked. I pushed it open a crack, hearing the sound of the TV inside. A K-drama. The leads were crying. She was lying on the bed, her back to the balcony, her wet hair splayed across the pillow. Her laptop was on the nightstand, its screen glowing with the WeChat interface. I slipped into the room. The carpet was thick, muffling my footsteps. I reached the bedside, just 2 meters away from her. Right then, she rolled over. The second she saw me, she bolted upright, her mouth opening to scream. I lunged forward, clamped my hand over her mouth, and pinned her back onto the bed. Don't make a sound. She stared at me with wide, trembling eyes. My other hand snatched the laptop. The screen was still active, showing the latest messages. Uncle Snake, that woman isn't dead yet. Jixia, she's gone into hiding. I can't find her. Uncle Snake, find her anyway. She knows too much. Jixia, understood. I turned the screen toward her. Who is Uncle Snake? She shook her head frantically, tears streaming down. I loosened my grip on her mouth but kept my knife pressed against her throat. Speak. I don't know. He's my handler, but we've never met in person. It's all online. Where is he? I don't know, I really don't. He uses a virtual IP. I tried to trace him once, but there was nothing. I stared into her eyes for 3 seconds. She wasn't lying. How much did you wash for him? 200 million, mostly through Chijo Group's books. I used my position to route it through underground banks. Does Lu Chijo know? She hesitated, then nodded. He knows actually. He's the one who told me to do it. He said the company lacked cash flow and told me to find a way. I knew Uncle Snake, so I laughed. So you're taking the fall for him? She said nothing. I tucked the laptop into my bag. I'm taking this. She panicked. You can't, all my chat logs are in there. Uncle Snake will kill me. Uncle Snake killing you is none of my business. I stood up and headed for the balcony. She knelt on the bed and screamed, Song Yang, please, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have tried to hurt you, but I had no choice. Lu Chijo made me do it. He said if you were dead, we could be together. I thought we'd actually have a life. I stopped. I looked back at her. She was kneeling on the bed, her face a mess of tears and snot, looking as pathetic as a dog. Lin Jixia. Yes. Do you know why Lu Chijo married me? She shook her head. Because he needed someone to be his human shield. He crossed too many people in business. He was constantly being cornered, constantly being threatened. After I married him, I took care of all those people for him. She was stunned. What about you? What do you need from him? Her lips quivered but no words came out. I laughed. You're quite pitiful too. He conned me using love. He's conning you using the future. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the night. Behind me, the sound of her sobbing drifted out, stifled and broken like an injured cat. I didn't look back. 1 week later, Old Ghost server room. I placed the laptop in front of him, the screen displaying Lin Jixia's WeChat chat history. Old Ghost whistled as he scrolled through. Damn, this woman is something else. 200 million in transactions, all routed through underground banks. These transfer records alone are enough to put her away for 20 years. Lu Chijo won't escape either. True, he's the mastermind. Old Ghost looked up at me. So what's the plan? Handing over the evidence. I shook my head. Not enough. What do you mean, not enough? Toppling them isn't enough. I pointed at an ID on the screen. Uncle Snake is the real big fish. Lin Jixia and Lu Chijo are just his tools. If we don't dig Uncle Snake out, he'll just put someone else in their place, and the cycle continues. Old Ghost frowned. You want to go after Uncle Snake? Yes, that's hard. We've been tracking this guy for 3 years and we don't even know if he's a man or a woman. Every contact is via virtual IP, payments go to offshore accounts, and his transfer records are as clean as a blank sheet of paper. I was silent for 2 seconds. Then I'll make him come to me. Old Ghost stunned. What are you planning? I didn't answer. I took out my phone and sent a message to Lu Chijo. Tomorrow morning 10:00 am Civil Affairs Bureau. We're finalizing the divorce. After sending it, I powered off the phone. Old Ghost watched me, his gaze complex. Hi donking. Do you know what you're doing? I do. Lu Chijo is currently being driven into a corner by those thugs Lin Jixia hired. If you show up now, he'll definitely see you as his lifeline. I know. And then you're going to use him as bait for Uncle Snake. I said nothing. He let out a sigh. Fine, as long as you know what you're doing. But I have to warn you, Uncle Snake is as ruthless as they come. Half of the black money in Southeast Asia goes through his hands. Very few people who cross him live to see the following year. I looked at him. Ghost, what was I before all this? He blinked. Hi donking, one of the top 5 killing machines in the mercenary world. I smiled. So, you think I should be afraid of him? Old Ghost laughed too, shaking his head as he turned back to the computer. The next morning 10:00 am Civil Affairs Bureau. I arrived 5 minutes early and waited by the entrance. Lu Chijo showed up right on time. He was wearing a suit and tie, but he had lost a lot of weight. His eyes were sunken. His stubble was uneven. He looked like a total wreck. He saw me, his eyes full of mixed emotions. Song Yang, let's go. I turned and walked inside. He followed behind me. The process was quick: signatures, thumbprints, submitting photos. In less than 20 minutes our marriage certificate was replaced by a divorce decree. I walked out with the certificate in hand, but he called out to me from behind, Song Yang. I stopped but didn't turn around. Are you doing okay? I turned to face him. He was standing in the lobby. The sunlight streaming through the glass doors illuminated his face, highlighting the fine lines at the corners of his eyes and the burst capillaries in his gaze. In just 1 month, he had aged 10 years. What about the baby? He asked again. Is the baby okay? Doing great. Boy or girl? None of your business. He lowered his head, silent for a few seconds. Song Yang, I'm sorry. I looked at him saying nothing. I know those 3 words are useless, but I truly never imagined it would turn out like this. I thought, you thought you could control it. He nodded. Lin Jixia said it was just a joke. She said she just wanted to see how much you loved me. I was possessed at the time and I agreed. I didn't think she'd hire those people. I didn't think they'd actually make a move. Lu Chizhou, I interrupted. Do you know what the funniest part is? He looked at me. The funniest part is that even now I'm not sure if you're saying this because you're truly sorry, or because you want me to clean up your mess. He's stunned. Your company's stock has dropped 30%. Your business partners have all pulled out. The families of those 20+ thugs are blocking your doors every day. You're at a dead end, aren't you? He looked down, silent. So you didn't just come here for the divorce papers, you came here to ask me for help, didn't you? He still said nothing. I laughed. Lu Chizhou, you're quite a piece of work. After what you put me through, you still expect me to help you. I turned to walk away. He chased after me and grabbed my arm. Song Yang, please. I looked at his hand. Let go. He released me. I know I have no right to ask you, but I'm truly out of options. Those thugs said they'd burn my company down and kill my entire family. My mother was so scared she had a heart attack. She's in the hospital right now. Then go find Lin Jixia. She's the one who hired them. Let her deal with it. She's gone. I blinked. What? She's gone. She left 2 nights ago, didn't take a thing, and her phone is off. I had someone look into it. She's left the country. She headed to Southeast Asia. I stood there, my mind racing. Lin Jixia fled to Southeast Asia to find Uncle Snake. Lu Chizhou. Yeah, what did she say to you before she left? He thought for a moment. She said she was going to find someone who could solve all our problems. Told me to wait for her for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Uncle Snake is in Southeast Asia. Lin Jixia went to find him to solve all the problems. Which problems? Me, the evidence I have, or the thugs? I turned and walked away. Lu Chizhou shouted after me. Song Yang, where are you going? I ignored him and called Old Ghost. Ghost, Lin Jixia has fled the country to Southeast Asia. Trace her flight and landing location. On it, but what? I just got word someone has put a hit out on you on the dark web. I paused in my tracks. Who? ID is Uncle Snake. Price is 5 million. He wants your head. Standing by the roadside, watching the flow of traffic, I smiled. Perfect. What's perfect about that? I was worried I wouldn't be able to find him. I hung up and sent a message to the nurse. How's the baby? Reply. Sleeping like an angel. I tucked my phone away and looked up at the sky. The sky was blue, the sun was fierce. 5 million. My life is actually worth quite a bit. 3 days later, Old Ghost server room. I stared at the data on the screen, rows upon rows of code and numbers that made my eyes ache. Found anything? Old Ghost shook his head. It's tough. Uncle Snake is using a Tor browser with multi-layer encryption. The IP has hopped through a dozen countries. There's no tracing the source. Then how does he contact buyers? There are dedicated trading platforms on the dark web. He's a premium member, so the platform provides him with anonymity protection. Unless we can get into the platform's back-end data, then we get the back-end data. Old Ghost glanced at me. Hi Donking, do you know where that platform is based? Where? Sihanoukville, Cambodia, an office building on the surface. It's a network technology firm, but it's actually the dark web stronghold in Southeast Asia. There are armed guards at the entrance, surveillance throughout the building, and the servers are in the basement behind. 3 layers of encrypted doors, fingerprint, iris, and passcode. I was silent for 2 seconds. Your intel is pretty precise. He grinned. Can't survive in this business without good intel. Then why haven't you gone? He spread his hands. I'm not that brave. That place is Uncle Snake's turf. His people guard it so tightly not even a fly could get in. Besides, even if I got in, I couldn't get the data. They have a self-destruct sequence, 3 wrong passcodes and everything is wiped. I stared at the screen, silent. After a few seconds I stood up. I'm going. Old Ghost stunned. You've lost your mind. I haven't. Your kid is only a month old. He has someone looking after him. Your body hasn't even recovered. It's recovered enough. That's Cambodia, Uncle Snake's home turf. I looked at him and smiled. Ghost, are you scared? He froze, then barked a curse. It's not that I'm goddamn scared, it's just that I don't think it's worth it. For a piece of trash like your ex, is it worth it? It's not for him. Then what for? I was silent for 2 seconds. For myself. What does that mean? I've realized something. Those last 3 years, that wasn't the life I wanted. I turned myself into someone else, and for what? They didn't even treat me like a human being. Now I want to find the person I used to be. He looked into my eyes for a long time, saying nothing. Finally, he let out a sigh. Fine, I can't stop you, but you have to promise me one thing. What? Come back alive, your kid is still waiting. I nodded. 3 days later, Sihanoukville, Cambodia, dressed in a local sarong and a headscarf, I blended in with the tourists and scouted the beach. The target sat at the far end of the shoreline, a 6-story office building with stark white walls and reflective glass windows that completely obscured the interior. 2 men in security uniforms stood at the entrance, handguns holstered at their hips. I kept walking, feigning interest in taking photos. I committed every detail to memory: the orientation of the main gate, the number of guards, their rotation schedule, and the camera placements. After a full lap, I headed back to the hotel to sketch the layout and map out my infiltration route. At 2:00 a.m., I changed into my black tactical gear and slipped out through the hotel's back exit. The office building was eerily quiet. The 2 guards at the front were nodding off. I circled around to the side. The exterior was clad in smooth tiles with 0 handholds. However, I spotted a window on the 2nd floor cracked open. I pulled out my suction cups, pressed them against the tiles, and began my ascent. Reaching the 2nd floor window, I peered inside. It was a restroom, empty. I pushed the window open and slipped in. The corridor was dim, lit only by emergency lights. I moved down the stairwell to the basement. There stood 3 secured doors. The first was a fingerprint lock. I produced a pre-prepared fingerprint mold. I'd lifted it from a beer can yesterday at the beach while one of the guards was drinking. Beep, the light turned green. The second door required an iris scan. This was the hardest part. I couldn't get a guard's iris, but I had a backup plan. Old Ghost had hacked into the Cambodian immigration system and found the building's legal representative, a man named Chen Jinlong. He had recorded his biometrics upon entry 6 months ago. I synced his iris data to my specialized contact lenses. Beep, access granted. The third was a passcode lock, 6 digits. I stood before it, hesitant. Old Ghost had warned me. 3 wrong guesses and the data wipes. I tapped into my phone, connecting to Old Ghost's remote link. Ghost, check Chen Jinlong's birthday. 5 seconds later, 19750321. I entered the last 4 digits. 0321. Buzz, red light. Damn it, not the birthday. I paused for 2 seconds. Check his company registration date, 20181206. I entered 1206. Buzz, red light again. 1 try left. My palms began to sweat. Ghost, are there any other significant dates? Hold on, I'm checking his travel logs. He leaves the country on the exact same day every single year. Which day? September 18th. I entered 0918. Beep, the light turned green. The door hissed open. Inside were rows of servers pulsing with blue light. A terminal sat in the corner, its screen glowing with a login prompt. I stepped over, plugged in the USB drive, and Old Ghost's decryption script ran automatically. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes. A progress bar hit 100%. Got it. Old Ghost's voice crackled in my earpiece. Everything's on the drive. I yanked the drive and turned to leave. Just as I reached the first door, the alarms blared. Shit, I sprinted out. Footsteps echoed from the stairwell, at least 7 or 8 men. There was no time for the main exit. I bolted upstairs, 2nd floor, 3rd, 4th, 5th. The door to the rooftop on the 6th floor was locked. I kicked it open and charged to the edge. A dozen men had already swarmed below. Looking up, I took a deep breath, backed up for a running start, and leaped. My body traced an arc through the air before I slammed onto the adjacent rooftop, rolling to kill the momentum. I scrambled up and kept running. Gunfire erupted behind me. Bullets chipped the concrete, sending shards flying. I leaped from roof to roof, finally sliding down a fire escape into a narrow alley. A motorcycle sat at the alley mouth. Keys still in the ignition, I hopped on, kicked it to life and pinned the throttle, vanishing into the night. The gunfire faded into the distance. An hour later, I was back at the hotel, collapsing onto the bed, gasping for air. The USB drive was still in my hand. I looked at it and smiled. Uncle Snake, I whispered, you're done. 1 week later, an abandoned factory in the suburbs back home. I stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by a dozen people, all Asian faces dressed in a motley assortment of gear. But they all shared one thing: the eyes of a killer. At the front stood a short-haired woman in her early 30s, wearing a leather jacket, squinting through cigarette smoke as she sized me up. Hi donking, 3 years and you've put on some weight. I smiled. Erwan, you're as punchable as ever. She grinned and threw a friendly punch into my shoulder. I heard you got married, divorced. Heard you had a kid. I did. Heard you're looking for Uncle Snake. Yes. She blinked, then turned to the crowd behind her. Listen up. Hai Donking wants to take down Uncle Snake, what do you say? The crew erupted in a chorus of shouts. Let's get him. Been wanting to move on that bastard for ages. That prick owes us too. Much blood. Airwan turned back to me, a glint in her eyes. Hear that? You're the one who led us out of the Golden Triangle alive back then. You name the target, we pull the trigger. I looked at them, my throat tightening. These were my former subordinates, the Golden Phoenix squad led by Airwan. They were an all-female unit that specialized in the most impossible contracts. When I retired 3 years ago, I'd entrusted them to Old Ghost. They seemed to be doing well. Airwan, what do you know about Uncle Snake's operation? She exhaled a cloud of smoke. A bit, real name unknown, goes by Uncle Snake. He handles the lion's share of black money in Southeast Asia. He's got a private security force, about 30 men, all former special ops, top-tier gear. His base is on the Thai-Cambodian border, in a place called the Golden Triangle Zone. The Golden Triangle Zone. Yeah, it's an IT park on the surface, but it's actually a hub for cyber fraud and money laundering. Snake occupies the most secure building in the center, 5 stories with a basement vault. I was silent for 2 seconds. Can we hit it? She looked at me and laughed. Hai Donking, are you seriously asking me that? I smiled. Fine, get the gear ready, we move in 3 days. Wait, I looked at her. You're really going? I am. What about the kid? He's being looked after. She stared into my eyes for a long time. Hai Donking, you aren't alone anymore, you have a son. I knew that, which is exactly why I have to finish this. Snake put a $5 million hit on my head on the dark web. If I don't kill him, he'll find me eventually and he'll find my son. She went quiet for a few seconds, then nodded. Understood, we're with you. 3 days later, Chiang Mai, Thailand, we chartered a minibus and headed east along the mountain roads. 3 hours later, the border came into view, barbed wire, guard towers, patrols. Airwan showed a set of IDs to the driver. He nodded and kept driving. Where did you get those? I asked. She smirked. Fakes, but they work along this line. As long as you pay, they'll believe anything. The bus crossed the border into Cambodia. The roads deteriorated quickly, surrounded by dense jungle with the occasional shack guarded by men with rifles. Almost there, Airwan said. I looked out the window. A cluster of buildings appeared in the distance, 5 or 6 stories high, arranged in a circle around a central plaza. That's the Golden Triangle Zone. The bus stopped at a checkpoint. 2 men in fatigues approached, rifles at the ready. Airwan rolled down the window and handed over a thick stack of US dollars. The men glanced at it and waved us through. The bus pulled up behind a building on the edge of the zone. We can't go any further by car, too many cameras, Airwan said. We go on foot. I stepped out and scanned the area with binoculars. The central blue building was unmistakable, 5 stories, blue-clad exterior, and reinforced ballistic glass. There were 4 sniper nests on the roof with guards pacing. 8 heavily armed guards stood at the entrance. Tough nut to crack, Airwan whispered. A frontal assault would cost us half the team. I lowered the binoculars. We aren't doing a frontal assault. Then how do we get in? I stared at the building. We wait for nightfall. At 11:00 p.m. the zone went quiet, save for the rhythmic sweep of searchlights. I led Airwan and 2 other team members through the shadows to the side of the blue building. The exterior tiles were as slick as a mirror. However, an air conditioning unit on the 2nd floor jutted out just enough. I threw my grappling hook. It bit into the unit's bracket. I gave it a sharp tug. Solid. We climbed 1 floor, 2, 3. Just as I reached the 3rd floor, an alarm shrieked. Infrared sensors. I accelerated, vaulting through a 4th floor window. Inside was a brightly lit hallway. I heard footsteps approaching. I pressed against the wall, waiting for them to pass. I peered out. 2 guards, rifles slung, walking the other way. I drew my suppressed pistol. Fut, fut, 2 shots, 2 bodies. I moved on. At the 5th floor landing, I encountered an iron door with a fingerprint lock. I pulled out the mold I'd taken from Chen Jinlong in Sihanoukville. I'd kept it, just in case. Beep, green light. I pushed the door open. Inside was a lavish office, floor-to-ceiling windows, leather sofas, and a mahogany desk. A man sat behind the desk. He looked to be in his 50s, thin, wearing glasses and a floral shirt. He held a glass of red wine, looking right at me. Hai Donking. He smiled, revealing a row of perfectly white teeth. I've been waiting for you. I stopped, my muzzle leveled at his head. Uncle Snake. He stood up, walked to a liquor cabinet, poured another glass and offered it to me. Care for a drink? I didn't take it. He shrugged and took a sip himself. You know, he started. The moment you stepped into this zone, I received word. Then why didn't you run? He laughed. Run, this is my turf, why would I run? No sooner had the words left his mouth than the door was kicked open. Over 20 heavily armed guards swarmed in, their muzzles all trained on me. I stood my ground, unmoving. He looked me dead in the eye. Haidongking, you've got balls, I'll give you that. Infiltrating my nest all by yourself. I'm not alone. He blinked, stunned. At that exact moment, an explosion rocked the world outside. Firelight flared against the window. His expression crumbled as he rushed to the glass to look out. In the plaza below, over a dozen silhouettes were trading fire with his guards. The gunfire was as dense as firecrackers on New Year's Eve. I looked at him and smiled. Uncle Snake, did you really think I'd spent the last 3 years doing nothing but cooking? He whirled around to face me, the look in his eyes finally shifting to genuine alarm. What do you want? Simple. I tilted my muzzle up slightly. Tell me who paid for the hit on my head. Snake watched me, silent for 3 seconds, and then he chuckled. Haidongking, you're an old hand in this game. Do you really think I'd talk? You will. Why? Because if you don't, I'll kill you right now. If you do, I might just let you live. He laughed again, shaking his head as he sat back behind his desk. You think these people outside are all I have? He pressed a button on the desk. The sound of more footsteps thundered from the corridor, at least 40 or 50 more men. Airwan's voice crackled in my earpiece. Haidongking, there are too many of them, we can't hold the line much longer. I didn't flinch, I kept my eyes locked on Snake's. He looked back, his gaze brimming with the smugness of a man who held all the cards. Haidongking, I've researched you, top 5 in the mercenary world, a trail of bodies behind you. But you have one fatal weakness. I said nothing. You're too sentimental. 3 years ago you retired for a man, now you're risking your life for a kid. People like you are so easy to handle. I watched him. So, the person who wants me dead, you know who it is? He nodded. Of course I know, but why should I tell you? Because I can make your death a quick one. He laughed, leaning back in his chair. Haidongking, you're surrounded by my men, your team outside is being wiped out. What leverage do you have to negotiate with me? I was silent for 2 seconds, then I smiled too. He sat bolt upright. What are you laughing at? I reached into my pocket, pulled out a USB drive, and gave it a little shake in front of him. Recognize this. His face went pale. I took this from the Sihanoukville office. It contains every transaction you've made in the last 3 years, bank records, client lists, chat logs. He stood up, his face turning a sickly shade of green. I've made 30 copies and stored them in 30 different locations. If I don't walk out of here today, those 30 files will be delivered simultaneously to the inboxes of Interpol, the Chinese Public Security, the Thai Police, and the Cambodian Anti-Drug Bureau by tomorrow morning. The color drained completely from his face. Uncle Snake, I said slowly, in 3 years how much have you washed? 1 billion, 2 billion, whose money was that? Drug lords from the Golden Triangle, warlords from Myanmar, human traffickers from Thailand. If they find out you lost the records of their transactions, how do you think they'll treat you? He didn't speak, but beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. So you see, I tucked the drive away. We can negotiate. He stared at me for a long time, the silence heavy between us. Finally, he slumped back into his chair and let out a long, ragged breath. What do you want to know? Who bought my life? He pulled a phone from his drawer, swiped through it a few times, and handed it to me. On the screen was a chat log, buyer ID, Summer, transaction amount 5000000, status completed, additional condition, an extra 2 million for Haidonking's head. I stared at the ID. Summer, Lin Jixia's English name, it's her. Snake nodded. She's been working with me for 2 years, helping me wash money. A month ago she came to me saying she wanted someone dead. I looked into it, it was you. I was silent for a few seconds. Where is she now? He shook his head. I don't know, she vanished right after the deal was done. I'm looking for her too. She has my ledgers. I can't rest easy until she's found. I looked into his eyes. He wasn't lying. I put the USB drive back in my pocket and turned to leave. Haidongking, he called out behind me. Aren't you afraid I'll come for revenge later? I stopped and looked back. Snake, you let me walk today, and we're even. You don't look for me, I don't look for you, but if you do, I smiled. You've researched me. You know what I used to do for a living. If you think 5 million can buy my life, you'd better prepare 50 million to buy your own. I pushed the door open. The corridor was packed with guards, their guns pointed at me. I took a step forward, they took a step back. As I reached the stairwell, Airwan's voice came through. Haidongking, we've pulled out. How are you doing? I'm out. And Snake, alive. Why? He's still useful. We tore out of the zone and into the car, racing for the border. By the time we hit the line, the sun was rising. Airwan slumped in her seat, covered in blood, none of it her own. Damn, we nearly bought it back there. I looked at her and smiled. Scared? She rolled her eyes at me. Scared my ass. I just remembered something you used to say. What? You said in our line of work, you either die before 30 or you wash your hands of it. You're over 30, you've got a kid, and yet here you are putting your life on the line. What's the point? I watched the trees blur past the window. For peace of mind. What's that supposed to mean? I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering if someone is coming to kill me or my child. As long as Snake isn't neutralized and Lin Jixia isn't caught, I'll never have peace. She didn't say another word. The car kept moving, toward Chiang Mai, toward the airport, toward home. 12 hours later, I stood by the crib watching my sleeping daughter. She was barely 2 months old. Her skin was pale and soft, her eyes closed, her little mouth slightly parted. I reached out and brushed her cheek. It felt like silk. Nyan nyan. She didn't wake, just twitched her tiny mouth and kept sleeping. I stood there watching her for a long time. Airwan sent a message. Traced it. Lin Jixia's IP appeared in Manila, Philippines. I replied, book the flight. I put the phone down and looked at my daughter. Nyan nyan, mama has to go handle something. I'll be back soon. She couldn't hear me, of course, but I leaned down anyway and kissed her forehead. I turned and walked out. The moment the door shut, she woke up and started to cry. I stood outside the door, listening to her sobs, gripping the plane ticket in my hand. 3 seconds later, I walked away. Manila, Philippines, the slums, dressed in a t-shirt, shorts, and a baseball cap. I blended in with the locals, moving slowly through the crowd. Lin Jixia's hideout was deep within the slums, a dilapidated 3-story building. The ground floor was a kebab stall, the upper floors were residential. Airwan's intel said she had rented the entire 3rd floor. She never left, having food and supplies delivered. She'd installed cameras at the door and bars on the windows. I stood at the kebab stall across the street, ordered 10 skewers, and ate while I observed. The 3rd floor curtains were drawn tight, but parked downstairs was a motorcycle, local plate, brand new, completely out of place in these squalid surroundings. The Filipino woman selling the kebabs saw me staring and leaned in, whispering in broken English. Chinese girl, rented, 300 pesos a day. What does she look like? Female, young, pretty, wears a mask. That was all I needed to know. After finishing the skewers, I circled to the back of the building. There was a narrow alleyway piled with trash, the stench overwhelming. The back window on the 3rd floor also had drawn curtains, but a t-shirt was hanging from the security bars, a white woman's t-shirt with lace trim, Lin Jixia style. I backed out of the alley and messaged Airwan. Confirmed. She's here. Reply. When do we move? Tonight, at 11:00 p.m. The slums went quiet. I changed into black clothes and scaled the back of the building. There was a maintenance hatch in the security bars, twisted shut with wire. I pulled out my pliers and snipped it open. The window wasn't locked. I slid it open a crack. It was pitch black inside, but I could hear breathing, even, rhythmic. She was asleep. I slipped inside, landing soundlessly. The room was tiny, a bed, a wardrobe, a desk cluttered with a laptop and phone. A figure lay on the bed, her back to me, her hair splayed across the pillow. I walked over and stood by the bedside. She rolled over, moonlight filtered through the gap in the curtains, illuminating her face. Lin Jixia. She had lost a lot of weight, her cheekbones protruded, her eyes were sunken and bruised, her lips parched. She was sleeping deeply, like a corpse. I reached out and nudged her shoulder. She woke the second she saw me. She opened her mouth to scream. I clamped my hand over her mouth and pinned her to the bed. Don't make a sound. Her eyes bulged, her body trembling violently as tears began to stream down. I let go of her mouth but pressed my knife to her throat. I ask, you answer. She nodded frantically. You're the one who hired Snake to kill me. She hesitated for a second, then nodded. Why? Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. I pressed the blade forward another millimeter. A bead of crimson welled up on her throat. She buckled, shaking uncontrollably, and blurted out, I was afraid of your revenge. I have so much dirt on you. If you're alive, I can't sleep. So you spent 5 million to buy my death. She nodded, sobbing. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Song Yang, please spare me. I was just terrified. I'll never do it again. Does Lu Chizhou know? She stunned. I asked if he knew you hired a hitman to kill me. She shook her head. No, he knows nothing. He thinks I went to Southeast Asia just to hide from debt collectors. I stared into her eyes. 1, 2, 3. She wasn't Lying, I sheathed my knife and stood up. She curled into a ball on the bed, clutching her neck, watching me with pure horror. Lin Jixia. Yes. Do you know how many people I've killed in my life? She shook her head. I've lost count, but it's well into the triple digits. Her face turned deathly pale. No one I want dead has ever escaped. You ran to the Philippines, hid in this hole, and you really thought you could hide from me. She shook her head, weeping. So remember this one thing. She looked at me. I'm not sparing you because I pity you, nor am I doing it for Lu Chizhou. Then why? Because you're still useful. She scrambled up and knelt on the bed, trembling. What do you want me to do? I pulled out my phone and hit the record button. Tell me how you laundered money for Lu Chizhou. From the very beginning, don't leave out a single word. She hesitated. Talk and you keep your life. And if I don't? I stared at her in silence. She lowered her head, silent for 3 seconds, then she began to speak. The books at Chizhou Group, they've been dirty for 3 years. She talked for 2 full hours. She detailed how Lu Chizhou recruited her, how they used offshore accounts to move funds, how they forged contracts to inflate profits, how they bribed tax officials, and how they funneled money through underground banks to be washed by Uncle Snake. She told me everything. The recording was crystal clear. By the time she finished, the sky was beginning to pale. I stood up and looked at her. She was kneeling on the bed, her face a mess of tears, as pathetic as a stray dog. Song Yang, you said you wouldn't kill me. I looked her in the eye. What I said was, you keep your life. Then you're letting me go. Go where? She froze. I tucked my phone away. The Manila police are already downstairs. Her eyes bugged out. She opened her mouth to scream. From outside the window came the sound of a megaphoned Tagalog, then English, barking the order. Occupants inside, you are surrounded. Come out with your hands up. I walked to the door and looked back at her one last time. Lin Jixia, enjoy your life in prison. I pushed open the door and headed downstairs. I brushed past the Filipino officers storming up the stairs. They glanced at me, but none stopped me. I had the business card of the Manila Police Commissioner in my pocket, along with Uncle Snake's transaction records. In exchange for the evidence, I'd helped them crack a human trafficking case that had been cold for 3 years. As I walked out of the alley, the horizon was turning white. My phone buzzed. Airone messaged. Done. I replied. Done. Heading home, I watched the morning glow for a few seconds. One more stop first. Where? Chizhou Group. 3 days later, domestic, the top floor conference room of Chizhou Group, the shareholders meeting. I was dressed in a black suit, sitting in the back row, wearing a cap and a mask. On stage, Lu Chizhou was delivering a speech about future planning and crisis management. He was passionate, eloquent, and seemingly moved by his own words. Over 100 shareholders sat below. Some nodded, some played on their phones, some yawned. As his speech neared its end, I stood up and walked to the front. The security guards tried to block me. I removed my mask. Lu Chizhou saw me and froze. Song Yang. A wave of murmurs erupted in the room. I shoved the guard aside, stepped onto the stage and stood right next to him. I leaned into the microphone. Shareholders, I'll take 10 minutes of your time. Lu Chizhou panicked and tried to grab the mic, but I pinned his shoulder with one hand. He couldn't budge an inch. My ex-husband. I pointed at him. Lu Chizhou, CEO of Chizhou Group. Over the past 3 years, he has abused his position to launder 200 million through underground banks with his assistant Lin Jixia. He forged financial reports, inflated profits, and bribed tax officials. The room exploded. Nonsense. Lu Chizhou screamed. Security, get this crazy woman out of here. The guards rushed forward, but I pulled a USB drive from my pocket and held it up for everyone to see. In here is the complete evidence of his money laundering, bank records, chat logs, audio files. I've made 30 copies stored in different locations. If I don't walk out of here safely, this evidence will be sent to the Economic Crimes Investigation Unit, the Tax Bureau, and every major media outlet simultaneously. The guards stopped in their tracks. Lu Chizhou turned ghostly white. I plugged the drive into the conference computer. A file list appeared on the giant screen. I clicked the first file, the audio recording. Lin Jixia's voice filled the room. The books at Chizhou Group, they've been dirty for 3 years. Dead silence fell over the room. Lu Chizhou stood paralyzed, trembling, unable to utter a single syllable. I stopped the recording after 5 minutes and turned to him. Lu Chizhou, do you have anything to say? His lips moved, but no sound came out. The doors burst open. Several men in uniforms marched in. Which one is Lu Chizhou? Lu Chizhou's legs gave out and he collapsed to his knees, 2 officers from the Economic Crimes Unit stepped forward and flashed their badges. Lu Chizhou, you are under arrest for embezzlement, money laundering, and commercial bribery. Come with us. They hauled him up and began to drag him out. As he passed me, he stopped and looked at me. Song Yang. I looked into his eyes for 3 seconds. He said nothing more and was dragged away. The room was in chaos. I pulled the drive and handed it to the lead investigator. The evidence is all in here. It's a complete chain. The lead took it and looked at me. Who are you? His ex-wife. How did you get this? I looked at him and smiled. Does it matter? He stunned for a second, then smiled back. No, thank you for your cooperation. He turned and left. I stood on the stage, looking at the messy room, suddenly feeling exhausted. I stepped down and walked toward the exit. Song Yang. I turned. It was a middle-aged woman in professional attire, Secretary Ju. Lu Chizhou's secretary. She looked at me and handed over a dossier. President Lu told me to keep this. He said if anything ever happened to him, I was to give this to you. I took it and opened it. Inside was a DNA report. Subjects: Lu Chizhou, Lin Jixia. Result: biological full siblings. Probability 99%. I froze. Siblings, they were brother and sister. Secretary Ju spoke softly. President Lu's background is complicated. His father had an affair and a secret family in Southeast Asia. Lin Jixia was the result. When he returned to China, he married President Lu's mother. After Lin Jixia's mother died, their father brought her back to China but never disclosed her identity. My mind went blank as I stared at the report. Did they know? They knew. And they still what? Pretended to be lovers. Secretary Ju's gaze was complex. He said it was the only way to protect her. Her identity couldn't be made public or she wouldn't have been able to stay in the country, keeping her as his assistant. And his girlfriend was the best cover. I tucked the report away. Why tell me this now? President Lu said if he went down, he wanted you to know that he didn't lie to you on purpose. Not on purpose. I laughed. So lying to me for 3 years was just an accident. She lowered her head. I know what he did was wrong, but what? She looked me in the eye. He really did love you. I was silent for a long time. Finally, I smiled. Secretary Ju, do you believe that? She didn't answer. I stuffed the report back into the envelope and tossed it back to her. I don't need this. Whether he loved me or not, I already know the answer. I turned and walked out. The corridor was long and quiet. My heels clicked against the floor, a steady rhythmic countdown. At the elevator, my phone buzzed. It was a video from the nurse. I watched it 3 times. Nyan Nyan was lying on the bed, waving her tiny hands and babbling. The elevator arrived. I stepped in, and the doors shut. I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. Flashbacks flickered through my mind. Lu Chizhou saying he loved me for the first time by my hospital bed. Lu Chizhou proposing on the beach, promising to love only me. Lu Chizhou spinning me around in joy when he found out I was pregnant. Was it all fake? I didn't know, and I didn't want to know. The elevator hit the ground floor. I walked out into the sunlight. My phone buzzed again. Old ghost. Snake is making a move. He wants to meet. I stared at the screen for 3 seconds. Reply. Time and place. I put the phone away and looked up. The sky was a brilliant blue. 3 months later, the docks, abandoned container zone 3, the same place. I stood at the warehouse entrance, looking inside. The surveillance room was still there, the door still there. The stains of red wine and steak were long gone. Footsteps approached from behind. Song Yang. I turned. It was Lu Chizhou. He was emaciated, wearing a rumpled suit, unshaven and hollow-eyed. He looked like a vagrant. The investigation had lasted 3 months, and the evidence was ironclad. He was out on bail awaiting trial. His lawyer said he was looking at 15 years minimum. He looked at the warehouse and gave a bitter laugh. I see this place in my dreams. I said nothing. He turned to me. Song Yang, I don't. He shut his mouth. Silence stretched between us. How is the baby? Good. What's her name? Song Nyan. He stunned, his eyes turning red. Nyan as in Nyan Nyan Bu Wang, unforgettable. I looked into his eyes. Lu Chizhou, don't flatter yourself. He lowered his head. The sound of sirens drifted from the distance. He looked up at me. Song Yang, there's something I have to tell you. What? Lin Jixia, she's my sister. I know, he continued anyway. I know it wasn't fair to you, but I had no choice. She grew up without a mother. When her mom died, she was only 5. My dad brought her back, but we couldn't go public. She thought of me as her boyfriend, but I was just enough. I cut him off. He looked at me, bewildered. Lu Chizhou, do you still not get it? He froze. You lied to me for 3 years. You used me as a tool, a shield. You had me bear your child and nearly left me to die in that warehouse, all because your sister needed a cover. His lips moved. But no words came. Do you have any idea how I lived these past 3 years? I woke up at 5:30 every morning to make your breakfast. Your stomach was sensitive, so I learned to make tonics. I cracked 7 clay pots perfecting them. When you came home drunk and vomited, I cleaned it up on my knees. When you crossed people, I fought them off. You said you loved me. And I believed you. And the result? The result was you asking me to crawl here like a dog just to make your sister happy. The sirens were very close now. Tears streamed down his face. Song Yang, I'm so sorry. I smiled. Lu Chizhou, do you know how I feel right now? He shook his head. Liberated. He blinked. After 3 years, I finally don't have to pretend anymore. The police cars pulled up. 2 officers stepped out. Lu Chizhou, time's up. He turned to follow them. At the car door, he looked back at me. Song Yang, do you hate me? I stood at the warehouse entrance, the wind whipping my hair. I looked him in the eye for 3 seconds. I don't. He stunned. Why not? I smiled. Because you aren't important enough to hate. The police car drove away, vanishing past the containers. I stood there for a long time. My phone buzzed, a video from the nurse. I opened it. Nyan Nyan was on her tummy, lifting her head and smiling at the camera. 2 little milk teeth had just poked through. I smiled too. I turned and left the warehouse. I walked down the corridor, past that door, past the ground where 20 men once fell. I walked out of the docks into the blinding sunlight. A van was waiting. Airwan was leaning against the door, a cigarette in her hand. Done. Where to now? I climbed into the car and looked out the window. Home. The engine roared to life as we hit the open road. I pulled out my phone and looked at Nyan Nyan's photo. She was smiling again, her eyes crinkling into crescents. I smiled back. Nyan Nyan, I whispered. Mama's coming home. Outside, the sun was just right. The END.